The Bubba and Zayde show is definitely a very sweet Rugrats episode, but I can't help comparing it to the classic series. This is the first segment of the ninth episode of the first season of the Rugrats reboot, and here we meet Boris and Minka of the reboot. And it's really difficult to judge them because all I can think of is how perfect Boris and Minka are as characters in the classic series. And I think they've completely lost that fun, that quirkiness of their personalities, particularly Boris. I think he had a really fun way of talking and referring to the babies, and none of that is present here. Hopefully, we'll start to get more of that, but at the moment they seem like very boring two-dimensional characters. But it is still quite a sweet story because every day after snack time they put on a puppet show via webcam for Tommy. He doesn't actually realize who they are outside of their puppet persona, so when they visit he doesn't really warm to them as Boris and Minka. And I feel like this is not a story they would have done with the classic series, and that is one of the great things about the reboot. We get to explore things that are a little bit more contemporary by today's standards, and having the tablet and the webcam, it shows that they're making a real effort to be there with their grandson, even if they're not with him in person. And I thought that was really lovely and it's really sweet. And when they visit, well, something goes wrong and Tommy and the other babies decide to try and put things right. It's an okay story. It is quite sweet, and Boris and Minka as characters in this are okay. There's nothing wrong with them, but I know they could do so much better and make them so much more interesting because we've seen them do that previously. That's not to say they had to create carbon copies. I wasn't expecting identical personalities. But at the moment, based just on this episode, they're kind of boring. Their behaviours were sweet, absolutely, but that doesn't mean they're very interesting. So we'll see going forward what it's like. But this episode on its own was absolutely fine. As I said, I liked this idea of them putting on this puppet show for Tommy via webcam when they can't be there in person. It was nice. We had a few funny bits of dialogue between Betty and Didi that I thought was pretty good. Generally, it's not the most amazing episode, but it wasn't too bad. As an introduction to the new Boris and Minka, it's fine. But for anybody who's seen the classic series, which I assume is everybody watching it, whether that's people who watched the classic series and then the reboot, or people who have watched the reboot and then decided to go on and watch the classic series, I feel like most people would. It's just a bit of a shame that at the moment, based on this episode, the characters are sweet, but not very interesting.